My lifelong pursuit of the supernatural has led me to countless archives, from Oxford to inner-city schools, rarely fruitful, until St Andrews, Scotland. There, deep within the campus library, I found it. A tome, its cover bound in weathered, blackened leather, bearing the cruel lines of centuries. It dated back to the 16th century, filled with mundane accounts of Ettrick, a small, isolated moorland town. I almost dismissed it. But then, on the inside of the back cover, a drawing not pleasing, disgust. Harsh, angry black lines. Stark imagery, I shuddered. A man, impossibly tall, with elongated, thin forms. His face, partially obscured by a gaunt, pale shape, was monstrous. Prominent veins pulsed from his forehead, leading up to a pallid, bald head. His eyes were deep-set hollows. The surrounding woods seemed to twist away in terror. Below, 1,578 and a name, Herbert Solomon. Was it the figure's name or the artist's? I didn't know. Disturbed, yet utterly compelled by that dark woodland scene, I knew this book demanded further study. I had to know who this creature was, and why his strange form haunted these pages. On closer inspection, the same disturbing image of that gaunt figure recurred elsewhere in the book, drawn by apparently different individuals. It became chillingly clear. Herbert Solomon was indeed the emaciated man in the picture. He had lived in the 16th century on the remote outskirts of Ettrick town. Ettrick itself was a small, underdeveloped place, encircled by thick forest and southern moorland. The town had a humble church, an inn, and quaint cobbled streets. Solomon was an outsider. He dwelled in a small, crude wooden cabin deep within the encroaching woods. His unfortunate appearance, a malady no one understood, led him to shun human contact. Many believed him cursed, a victim of a wasting disease. He rarely ventured into town, and when he did, his features were obscured by a tarnished hat and a grey cloth, leaving only deep-set, darkened eye sockets visible. Townsfolk spoke in whispers of him, claiming he would stand at the forest's edge, watching farmers, watching their children play. This unnerving fascination sowed unease. Some children, returning from play near the woods, would occasionally carry beautifully crafted dolls and toys. Presents, they'd say, from Herbert Solomon. Innocent children, unaware of the shadow that watched them, unaware of the dangers lurking just beyond the forest's edge. Then the entries in the book took a darker turn. During the bleak December of 1577, a chilling pattern emerged. Children started to disappear from Ettrick. The first was Alana Sutherland. She had been playing by an old well, dropped her doll, and was last seen walking back towards it at sunset. A frantic search ensued. Townsfolk dredged the well, combed wheat fields, and sent groups into the woods. Alas, the girl was not found. A few days later, dread deepened. Eric Kennedy vanished on an errand at night, just a few streets away. He never completed it, torn from existence. By the end of January, an unusually bitter winter had descended, bringing hardship. Thick sheets of ice and snow smothered every house. Several townsfolk succumbed to the cold alone, and Ettrick's mood became somber. Despite these trying times, a far greater concern gripped the people: the safety of their children. In total, 7 young lives had now disappeared without rhyme or reason. Whole families wept in despair, and the people of Ettrick began to eye one another with suspicion. Deep down, they knew the terrifying truth. Someone or something was taking their children from them. By mid-February, 2 more children went missing. Accusatory glances were shared between every family. The town elder decided to act, to identify and catch the fiend. Bureaucratic discussions filled the town hall, church groups convened. In every house, on every street, in every corner of Ettrick, one name crossed their lips: Herbert Solomon. The more it was mentioned, the more certain his guilt became. When children began to disappear, eyes immediately turned to the strange man living in the woods. Accusations, carried by whispers, grew in volume until it was decided: Herbert Solomon must be stopped. On a cold February night, the elders decreed his immediate arrest. Grief, anger, resentment, and fear reached a fever pitch. Every man, woman, and child set out across the fields, entering the forest in search of the child killer. Details of that night are limited, but it seems they converged on his cabin, setting it on fire. The crowds cheered as the heat grew, the fire rose. His screams echoed through the woods, finally silenced by the flames. The townsfolk believed justice had been done, finding grim satisfaction, even if grief could never be quenched. However, over the following few days, a profound unease descended upon the entire town. Stories began to spread of strange encounters in the streets at night, a gaunt, shadowy figure prowling the cobbled stones, hiding in darkness. Within a week, numerous residents claimed to have woken to the petrifying sight of an unwelcome visitor. One account was of an elderly lady who woke to rustling under her bed, only to nearly die of shock as a tall, thin, dark shape pulled itself out. She fainted, but not before seeing its face. Withered, ravaged by disease, eyes blacker than night, forms comprised of tightly pulled skin over bone. Another story. A local tradesman investigating a cellar noise was confronted by a hideous figure, so tall and gaunt it hunched to avoid the low ceiling, its sheet-white face flickering in candlelight. He escaped, but refused to re-enter his premises. It became terrifyingly clear. The vengeful ghost of Herbert Solomon was still searching for victims from beyond the grave. His hate and hideous form haunted the town that murdered him. With each passing day, sightings grew in intensity and number. A thick, unnatural fog descended, and people wept and grieved as the sound of Herbert Solomon terrorized each person, night by night. He was seen wandering amongst the wheat fields, in cellars and lofts of cottages, his long, gaping footsteps ringing out each night through Ettrick town. They had been cursed. In life, Herbert Solomon had been accused of taking their children. Now in death, he possessed the twisted means to terrorize the entire town. Then the unthinkable happened. Another child went missing. A young orphan girl, often wandering the streets, was heard screaming for her life. Townsfolk rushed to their windows, paralyzed by fear, not daring to leave their homes. The screaming ceased quickly. Moments later, wandering aimlessly out of the fog came the menacing figure of Herbert Solomon. He rushed down the street, his lifeless, elongated forms bashing against the houses, scraping doors and windows with rigid forms, emitting an unnatural yell of anger and hatred on his way. The girl was gone, and the town grieved once more. In the preceding days, the fog grew denser, and with it came the unwelcome news of 2 more children taken. One, a girl who left home after an argument, never to be seen again. The other, a boy named Matthew, taken from his bed by the spectral forms of Solomon while his father lay unconscious from drink. During a church service, the unthinkable happened. Solomon appeared briefly in the aisles, seemingly unaffected by consecrated ground. The congregation whimpered in horror as his warped, spindly form walked behind a pillar and vanished. It was a chilling show of influence. Hope was almost lost. Not even a place of worship could deny him. He could enter any home, take whoever he wished. The town had to act or abandon the place. The local vicar, Mackenzie, was asked to use his sacred power. A plan was devised. Mackenzie and a few chosen individuals, armed with torches, blessed swords, and holy water, would guard the town, waiting for the cursed figure. That night, the lonely figure of Herbert Solomon appeared through the mist, walking the streets with purpose. Yells and screams rang out. Families held their children close, dark thoughts consuming them. "Please spare my child, take another's." Mackenzie was the first to confront him. His will was shaken by Solomon's hideous pallid face, rotten and ravaged. The gangly, spindling figure stood staring intently at the vicar through black, clouded eyes. Another man joined, then another. Soon Solomon was surrounded. Mackenzie instructed them to slowly close the circle, drawing swords with one hand while brandishing flaming torches with the other. Fear gripped them, but this was their only chance. Mackenzie threw a vial at Solomon's lumbering feet, uttering a Christian psalm. Another man struck out with his torch. The blow crackled as the cloth-covered, elongated form of Solomon caught fire. Cheers rang out from townsfolk, but the man had strayed too close, providing a gap. Solomon, with purpose, claimed it. His spindling forms and flailing forms cast spider-like shadows as he passed. Townsfolk gave chase, following the pathetic figure through streets, lanes, and courtyards. Herbert Solomon is trying to flee. The noise alerted the town. From every home, people poured out with makeshift weapons, flooding the streets. Solomon was running out of places to hide. Finally, stumbling down the main street, he stopped. Townsfolk had blocked all escape routes. He was trapped. Mackenzie pushed to the front, asking for quiet and calm. He and his chosen few were going to rid Ettrick of this abomination. Vial in hand, accompanied by bullish men with swords, Mackenzie approached, reciting Bible verses. Through dark eyes, Herbert Solomon observed the townsfolk, their faces etched with hate and revenge. Then he simply turned and entered an open doorway next to him. The people gasped. Mackenzie and his followers rushed inside. The house was still. Lying on the hard wooden floor of the main hallway was the pale body of a young girl. Pursuers searched above, finding nothing. Then, miraculously, the little girl gasped she was alive. With little strength, she uttered one word: below. In the cellar, Mackenzie found a grim and horrific scene. The floor was covered in blood, and the quite dead body of a man lay face down upon it. Chained to the walls were the children who had been taken, partially drugged, malnourished, traumatized, but alive. The town rejoiced. Families reunited. The mist lifted. On regaining strength, the children recounted what had befallen them. They were taken by Tom Sutherland, father of the first missing girl, Alana. It appeared he had killed her, consumed by guilt and loss, then began taking other children at knife point, locking them in his cellar, drugging and beating them. On the day they were found, Sutherland entered the cellar drunk, knife and rope in hand. He began striking the children, telling them one would die. He untied a child, pinned her, knife hovering. Just as he was about to plunge the blade, someone entered the house above. Sutherland grew ferocious, but whoever was there struck such fear into him that he backpedaled into the cellar. Ducking under the doorway was the tall, scarred figure of Herbert Solomon. At the sight of him, the little girl crawled quickly between Herbert's long forms. Free but too weak to run, she fainted. Tom Sutherland's neck was broken, his head twisted unnaturally. There were various accounts of subsequent glimpses of Herbert Solomon, and some children claimed to find beautifully crafted dolls and toys at the wood's edge. But these could not be substantiated. Indeed, I would have dismissed the entire story if not for events I experienced months later. After reading that old book, a colleague invited me to stay at his family home in the Scottish countryside, not half an hour's drive from Ettrick. I couldn't miss the chance to see the area, bringing the book to my friend, who had local history knowledge. His family was kind, the house and grounds serene in the summer sun, his children playing carefree. After reading the book, he found it fascinating, mentioning a 17th century poem about a man named Solomon who killed children, but could say no more. The next day, screams erupted from nearby. It was my friend's little girl. We raced outside, following her cries over a fence, down a steep hill to a furious river. The girl had fallen in, clinging to a large tree root. My friend screamed as she lost her grip, swept downstream towards huge, sharp rocks. The river threw her around with brutal force. Survival seemed impossible. Filled with terror, we reached the water's edge, watching helplessly as she was about to crash. Suddenly, our attention was grabbed by cracks and creaks. A tall, gaunt figure rushed out of the pitch-black woods on the opposite bank with tremendous speed. With one swift motion, a thin, bony form plunged into the violent water, prevailing against the immense currents, finally pulling the young girl to safety. She was alive, frightened, crying, but alive and unhurt. The pale-faced, emaciated figure placed the girl gently on the ground, stared at us from across the water through darkened eyes as we clambered to safety, then turned and disappeared into the woods, fading away to nothing but a memory. Even in death, Herbert Solomon was the kindest and gentlest of souls. That brings us to the end of today's video. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe to join the channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts or any changes you'd like to see in the comments below. Until we meet in another story, take care.